great is this?
Yeah, well, don't tell Bert.
No, of course not. I don't think I could work. I'm not a man who wears many hats.
Even with a
especially
T-top,
birds.
it doesn't work.
I feel like Fred Gwynn of the Munsters, I'd say. All right. How great is this? We're in the Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, the promotional one from the movie. I feel like you're not Sally Field. I just had to bring that up. You're not Sally
Glad
Field.
you noticed that.
Thank you.
But you think about it, if you grew up in the late 70s, this was the iconic car of that era. I mean, this was, there wasn't a lot of performance in the late 70s, but you had the great looks of this car.
Yeah, and your Trans Am story, in a way, is just so, you know so much of the history of this thing.
Well, I grew up a huge racing fan, so I was starting following the Trans Am series from the late 60s, actually from 66 all the way through the glory years up till 72. The Trans Am name to me is more than just a car. It's, Mark Donohue and George Fulmer and Parnelli Jones and these iconic racing heroes who did incredible things. The great irony is that the Trans Am itself, the Pontiac Trans Am, didn't race in the Trans Am series because the engines were too big back in those days. There were Firebirds that raced, but not this one. And the other interesting story is that General Motors had to pay $5 for every one of these cars to what was called the Sports Car Club of America because they own the Trans Am name. So this was a big profit center for SCCA for many, many years.
Only $5?
Only $5.
Gee, I can tell how long ago that was, right? Wow. Now, we've known each other a long time. We go back to our Cal Poly days. And we, of course, at the same time, were a year or two apart. We're general manager of the campus radio station. And a lot of that stuff we were discussing that your first background of automobile racing, you're on ESPN all over the place. We've seen you everywhere. Your first race that you called was at Cal Poly in the day. Yeah,
Cal Poly used to have this event called Poly Royal, and it was basically a weekend of demonstrations. All the departments would do something. Well, the engineering folks would do a soapbox derby race. So the mechanical engineering guys, they would have a soapbox derby race. It was pretty sophisticated. And as a broadcaster for the college radio station, one of the first things I did was call that race. It was great. It was a great experience. Little did I know when I was calling the soapbox derby race at Cal Poly back in the mid-70s that I'd be calling the Indy 500 on ABC.
Hey, learn by doing.
Exactly.
That was their motto. You might as well. And we were also talking about, we both grew up in the same area, West San Fernando Valley. There was a place you used to work where you'd run into these things all the time.
Yeah, my college job was I worked my way through college working at Sears Automotive. So while I wasn't working on the 77s because I was gone by then, but a lot of the cars that were in the Trans Am, the Challengers, the Cudas, the Camaros, those were cars that I was working on a regular basis. I started off as a tire buster, ended up as a service writer, and I look back on that era, and it was such fun to work on those cars back then because there was so much room. They were so unsophisticated. I remember the first time we got a Camaro in that had all the smog equipment, and we couldn't even get the starter out because of the way the headers worked around it. They became so complicated, but in the era I was working on it, it was an awful lot of fun.
Rick DeBruhl from Velocity TV joining us right here in the Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am. How cool is this? So when you're out there, and I know you're doing all the commentary on the cars, you have an information computer page, you've done research. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're doing that stuff and you kind of flash back to those times when you had up close and personal moments with cars like that?
Well, but I think that's the great part about the broadcast, especially with Mike Joy and Steve Magnante, and we're up on the block and we're talking about the cars. And that's what's fun, is to go back and tell the story of when you had a particular car, or a friend of yours had a particular car, or you lusted after a particular car because the pretty lady down the street had one of those cars. So it's not enough to talk about the cubic inches or the type of disc brakes it's got. It's the stories that the cars bring that frankly make Barrett Jackson and the collector car industry so great.
And you're so right, because we were sitting here getting ready to do this here, and just some of the people that gathered, they had to come up and say, oh, I had one of these, and I have one of these, or I want one of these. I mean, this is a car that's how old, yet the stories, the desire, it's still there.
Yeah, what I love especially is, we see plenty of folks of our generation walking around talking about these cars. What I love is when they have their grandkids out here, and they're introducing an entire new generation of people to this collector car hobby. The beauty of the cars, the mechanical aspects of it. I think it is great when we get another generation involved.
I think before Buford T. Justice shows up, we probably should vacate the premises.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure still nobody's here that is noticing anything, so
It's our secret.
Thanks for joining us, Rick. Appreciate it.
No
And
problem. Always a pleasure.
Have a great broadcast.
Will do.
All right.